Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast in which Craig Touch and myself, Roland, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry we're in of writing and self-publishing, except this today, because it is the first episode of 2026. We have two special leading lights who are me and Craig. We're going to kick off this year by chatting just amongst ourselves about some of the interesting things going on. So I'm going to throw it right over to Craig. How are you doing today? And what are we going to be chatting about?
I'm doing great, thanks. Today I thought we would talk about what happened in 2025 as sort of a wrap up of some of the biggest trends and news items that affected our industry. And then maybe you and I can give some of our predictions about what we think is going to happen in 2026 and what'll be the big items that will affect writers and self-publishers. So how does that sound?
I think that sounds fantastic. And, I think this is a great opportunity for us to chat about things. Hopefully people will find it useful, but also, it's an opportunity for us to focus on what our plans as writers and creative people are moving forward into the year. So which things are going to be important for us to focus on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's start off with 2025 and what we think are some of the biggest things that happened. And I guess I can start off with saying, obviously, as much as it's loved and hated, mostly hated, but maybe a little less so than it was, AI, right? AI is obviously still the big thing. It's still affecting every industry, not just writing and publishing. And it has become, like I've been saying, whenever we talk about it, we can't ignore it. We might not like it, but ignoring it isn't going to make it go away. It's only getting stronger. It's only getting bigger. It's only getting more pervasive in sort of everything we do. 2025, we really saw the growth of that in our industry, in the sense of, like, even when you don't look at it from a writing perspective, you see it coming. A lot of we're hearing with audiobooks, there's a lot of talk about using AI. I think even Audible does it, where you can use virtual voices, which again, maybe people don't think that those are as good as regular voices, but for somebody, smaller publishers, smaller writers who can't afford the high cost of audiobooks, this has really democratized that and allowed them to have an audiobook when they maybe couldn't before. Of course, bigger authors can still hire people. Everyone can still hire people, but it has given some people the ability to do that. We see AI is being used in different workflows to help with as a co-pilot for automation of different things, for brainstorming, for all sorts of things. But at the same time, we also see all those legal battles that have been going on forever, and we're starting to see some of them have been sort of settled. I think there's the Anthropic one. There was a big settlement, and there's supposed to be some payouts to authors and stuff. But then there's individual lawsuits from people that opted out of those big ones, and it's still going on. But that has been one of the biggest, I think, news items that have affected our industry and every other industry in 2025.
I think that's a really good summary. AI is absolutely here right now. It's got to the stage now. If you're scrolling on Facebook or Instagram or something and they have AI videos, they are getting to the point now where you can't tell the difference between real and not. Like, I followed the stupid account of these two cats who go out on vacation and try food and stuff like that, and it's brilliant. And it's amazing. And I'm like, this is going to change everything. It's like the Industrial Revolution, except a creative revolution. And I don't know if you know, but I have a joint honors in history, and I focused on the Industrial Revolution. And it's so interesting. Back then, there were these people, the Luddites, who used to throw their tools into the machines to break them, because they thought that industry was robbing them of all their jobs. And yes, industry made those jobs go away, but it created all sorts of new jobs for people. And I am choosing to look at AI as possibly one of the greatest opportunities for wealth generation and really changing the dynamic ever. I mean, content creation on Facebook and Twitter, people are spending hours doing that. And the one thing, as a writer, I don't think, I mean, I know they all said, oh, AI is going to, you know, remove writing as a thing. I don't think that's going to happen, because throughout it all, I've seen AI do such incredible things, but AI cannot write a full-length novel. And I genuinely don't believe it is ever going to do that, because to write a full-length novel requires so much human experience to make it believable and readable. And so I think AI is going to help authors in so many different ways, but it's not going to replace authors. And in fact, I think one of the things that's really interesting is reading seems to have been exploding as something. I mean, one of the things you mentioned in your list is there's book talk has exploded, dark fantasy and dark romantasy has exploded as a genre. More people are reading those particular genres than ever before. So it's kind of like, hey, maybe instead of hurting the writing and publishing industry, maybe AI is going to help it. And I know I've been going on for a little while, but one of the things I found really interesting about this is theatre. Yeah. If you imagine going back in time to the 1910s, the 1920s, when movies started coming out, you would think, oh, movies are going to completely wipe out the theatre industry. And actually, if you look now, Broadway is making more money than it has ever made in the entire history of Broadway, despite the fact that there are movies and television shows and things like that. I think AI is just going to, instead of taking a slice of people's pie, it's going to make the pie bigger.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of controversy about the idea that AI is being used for it's being used by systems without authors' consent, and a lot of that happens. A lot of that is causing stress amongst authors. Like we covered this somewhere briefly, or maybe I wrote a newsletter, I can't remember, but the idea that Amazon was doing an AI summary of books without authors' consent, and they would get things wrong, right? So authors or readers would look at the product page and or wherever it is, and they'd look for at the summary, and then the summary might be wrong, give some misleading facts or maybe spoilers or whatever it is, because nobody's really watching it, right? It's just automated. It's creating that thing, and maybe it works a lot of the time, but there's a lot of times where it doesn't work, right? And there's what people need to remember when they create AI is they have to, they should be giving it as a choice. It should be opt-in, opt-out, but they have to remember that it's still not perfect. It's still fallible, and you have to consider those things when you're building a system for it, right? I agree, you know, it's not writing books for us yet, and you know, whether it will or won't, I think you know, there'll probably come a time where it certainly can write a full-length novel. Whether it will be very good, probably not. But you know, we're seeing a lot of people sort of, there's almost this resurgence of human created, where it's like people are saying, you know, when they're selling a service that other people are selling with AI, one of the selling points they'll say is like, this is like done by a human, right? And people that are against AI or that want that human experience will choose those things. And so there's still those opportunities, even in things that are becoming overtaken with AI, for humans to continue to work and differentiate themselves from AI. But yeah, I think in our industry, when it first started, authors were very much against it. The shift continues to go where they're accepting it more, but with limitations, right? And there's still people that don't like it. And so again, I say, if you're going to build something with AI, if you're going to do something with AI, you should be transparent about it, and you should allow users to opt out of it or whatever, right? Otherwise, you're gonna lose a lot of trust. You're gonna lose a lot of customers, and you're gonna, you know, piss people off.
Yeah, and I think it's very important not to gloss over the fact, because you mentioned the court cases with Anthropic and stuff like that, where basically Anthropic just sucked up all these books from pirated book sites and used them to train its LLMs. And to be honest, all AI has been created using unethical means, I think. just because it needs that volume of stuff. So I think it is important to actually take a pause and be like, yes, we acknowledge the fact that the existence of AI has been achieved through the incredible mind-boggling theft of people's intellectual property. And I think it's difficult to understate just what a huge theft of people's intellectual property it is. It's almost like, you know, how America, the United States is basically built on Indian graveyards because the Europeans came and stole it all from the Native Americans. Like everything that happens in the AI there is going to be this one moment where it just basically stole everything that people had created for decades, years, and then we're going to move on from that. But I think it is important to acknowledge that and to recognize that and to respect when people are upset about AI and how AI was created and the ethical problems with that. I think it's important to take a pause and be like, yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah. And I think that's where all the lawsuits are coming from, and they will get resolved eventually, you know, whether it's to everyone's satisfaction or not, I don't know. But it will change things, right? Because you can't say, okay, on one hand, we're acknowledging that we did all these wrong things and we're paying it out, but now we're going to continue doing them. Like, there will be a way forward. And I've often said, and I still believe it will be some sort of an opt-in method where they, you know, people choose whether or not they allow their stuff to be used for training and stuff. But you know, who knows what will come up. All right, so, you know, AI, that's one thing, one of the biggest, I think, trends for 2025. What else have we got?
Before we move on to that, are you using AI in your creative things? Because I have to admit, I've been back and forthing with Grok as I've been working on a particular story idea, and I haven't used it to do any writing because I don't think any AI is capable of doing writing, but it is quite useful for you. Write your little plot thing out, and then it's like, hey, Grok, can you break this out into Dan Harmon's story circle? And we'll do it. And you can be like, oh, that's interesting. And you can see what's strong and what's not strong. But the one thing that I've noticed in doing that is, you mentioned that it's not perfect. It really, like, I think AI is very, very imperfect. To me, I call it Dave. I'm like, imagine you've got a bloke called Dave, and all Dave does all day is just sit there, and he's got access to Google, and he will listen to you and he'll come up with stuff. But he's Dave. He's just some bloke. He doesn't necessarily know what he's talking about, because every time I work with AI to come and figure things out, I'm always coming up with these mistakes that it has, that it very blithely like offers you stuff. Like, I'm planning this book set in Greece in the 1940s, and this woman, I thought, oh, maybe she's got a mule because my mother likes mules, so maybe I'll throw a mule in there. And AI was like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, we'll call the mule this or whatever. But mules didn't exist in Greece in the 1940s, and of course AI doesn't know this. AI just wants to help. AI is just like a really helpful dumb bloke called Dave who can Google stuff for you. And I think we have to acknowledge that as well. I think it's a really interesting tool for like brainstorming and working on things, but we have to accept its limitations, and we have to recognize its limitations. We have to take responsibility for not making mistakes. And can I actually, I know I've been talking like crazy, I've drunk a lot of coffee today, but are you familiar with that book, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas?
No.
Oh, you're not? Oh, it's a book that got made into a movie. It was set in World War II. It was about the son of an SS officer who lived next to Auschwitz or something, and he befriended the little boy in the striped pajamas who was a boy in the concentration camp. And it was a tragic story because in the end, the SS officer's son got gassed with the boy, which I don't know. It's an interesting one. It's a big deal. But the author of that book just got caught out because he wrote another book set in the medieval period about people who dyed fabric. And he clearly used AI to get the instructions on how people would dye fabric. And he didn't double check. And what happened is he wrote this book and it was published and people bought it. And then people were looking at it being like, these aren't the ingredients to dye fabrics. Well, they are the ingredients to dye fabrics in Zelda Legend Breath of the Wild or something like that. And AI had literally taken the components for dyeing stuff from a video game. He hadn't double checked it and he put it in his book. And I mean, it just robbed him of complete credibility. It's like he's a joke now. And so it shows that AI is a tool, but a tool is only as good as the craftsman who uses it. And you've got to take accountability for.
Yeah, and it's becoming harder to do that. Like if I go to search, if I Google something, it gives its AI an overview, right? And that is basically it's almost replacing the search results. It's making it easier to just look at that summary and say, oh, that's the answer, and I don't have to
Yeah.
go clicking through. And then you think like that's pulled, but it still could be wrong, and you definitely have to double check with actual sources, and then you have to make sure that those sources weren't just written by AI too, right? It's getting harder for sure, and
Yeah.
that is very sycophantic, right? It's always telling you, oh, that's a great idea, even if it's not, right? And then when you call it out on it, saying, well, actually, I don't know about this. Oh, yeah, you're right. Like
That's what annoys me, where it goes to like,
yeah,
yeah, you're totally right. What I said was
yeah,
completely incorrect. And you're like, well,
right.
that's not very useful, is it?
I used to work with a guy. This was 20 years ago. Very, very smart guy. This was back when I was in technology. And whenever I didn't know something, I'd go and I'd ask him because he was really, really smart. But if he didn't know something, he would still answer with as much confidence as when he did know something. And so, he'd say, oh, it's this. And then, okay. And then I'll go and then chat, and then it wouldn't work. And then I go back to him and go, I don't know. It's like, yeah, but why'd you tell me you knew? And with such confidence that I was sure that you were right? And that's what AI does. It just tells you with confidence. Here's a non-writing example before we move on. Just because you brought this up, and this reminded me very recently. We've been doing it in Canada. Very cold out. And me and my family, we don't like to go out as much when it's cold. So my wife and I have been doing puzzles, and we got this massive. We were doing these 1,000 piece puzzles, and we could do them in a few days. It wasn't that challenging. So I borrowed this 3,000 piece puzzle from a friend of mine, and it's Marvel. It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's got all the characters and whatever. And 3,000 piece puzzles. A lot harder than 1,000 pieces. It doesn't take 3 times as long. It takes much longer. But anyways, but the picture on the box, I thought it would come with a big poster because this thing was massive, it was like 4 feet long. But the picture on the box was all we had, so it was really small. And I'd take pictures and I'd zoom in. So before I even started, I took a picture of it, and I was looking at all the characters, and I was asking AI to explain who some of the characters were because I didn't know. And then I was like, is Wolverine in this? I was like, because I can't find any X-Men. I was like, but where's Wolverine? And it's like, oh yeah, Wolverine's right there. He's right next to blah 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 blah. And I'm looking, and I'm like, I don't see him. And I reply, I said, I don't see him where you said. And then it was like, oh yeah, no. Its first answer was, oh, absolutely, he's right here. Yeah, and describe it. And I'm like, I don't see him. And then it was like, oh yeah, you're right, he's not in this picture. I was like, what are you doing? Like, yeah. So yes, you have to check. But let's move on because we've already spent a third of our whole podcast on AI, and especially for all those authors who hate AI that have already turned us off. So what else were the big trends? I think direct sales has really become a big thing in 2025 and will continue that way. And you know a lot about that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. With AI, I mean, one of the not with AI, with direct sales. Like, direct sales is my great white whale. I've been so enjoying it, even though I've been having like mixed results. Sometimes you do really well with it, sometimes you don't do really well at it, but it's so much more rewarding to do than just chucking all your stuff up on Amazon. If there was a way, where you could have all of your advertising data and your Amazon sales data together, that would be fantastic. But unfortunately, that doesn't exist at the moment. But it's very rewarding, and I've seen a lot of people be successful at it. A lot of people find it very intimidating because it has a very steep point of entry. The one thing that I think is really interesting, which kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, is one of the most effective ways to sell books is to leverage yourself as an author. And that's different. I used to write romance novels under a pen name. I would just throw the romance novels up there and hope the quality of the novels and the hooks and stuff would be valuable. But I think more and more people are interested in the people who are writing books, and they buy a book not necessarily because the book excites them, the book maybe interests them, but they buy it to kind of like validate you, to support you as a person. And so I think with direct sales, that's something that is going to be more and more important. I think with Amazon, you can throw things into the Amazon system, and if you're clever with your covers and your taglines and your metadata and stuff like that, you can achieve a certain amount of success. With direct sales, though, I think you have to think of it you're not just competing in the bookstore space like with Amazon. You've got to think of it as an e-commerce business. And I think using yourself is a very powerful way to leverage direct sales and actually make sales and become more successful than you could be on Amazon.
Yeah, and you're creating that direct relationship with the readers, so that you can then leverage for future sales, and instead of leaving it all up to Amazon to own that sort of information, right? And I think that's a good trend, and it probably will continue into 2026, where more and more authors are going that route. There's more technology involved in it, but sites like Shopify and all that, they've made it easier, and I'm sure it'll become easier still as more solutions and more pre-built stuff come around that help authors create that direct sales model and glean the analytics they need from it, and all that stuff. So yeah, and then we touched on this a bit when we were discussing AI, because of how AI is sort of making it easier, but audiobooks I think are becoming even more popular lately as well. There's sort of been a little mini boom as far as what I've seen from different articles, from authors, from different things that I've read, that audiobooks are becoming even bigger than they were before.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in that, because I don't know about you, but I got started in well, I think this is the same, because this is how we met, but I got started in self-publishing by writing dirty little short stories, which I would publish on Amazon, and I have a huge catalog of those, and they still, every single year they make me $3,000 a year just sitting there doing nothing, and I have the ability to use Amazon's voice service to actually voice them. And I'm like, am I leaving a huge amount of money on the table by not doing this? I mean, the problem is the way I write them, I'd have to go in and update all the manuscripts, because if I have a character stuttering, I'd be like, and then when you actually have the AI voice, it sounds really goofy. So I'd have to go and make sure all the dialogue works and it works out properly. So it's going to be quite a lot of effort to do it. But is that a huge amount of money I'm leaving on the table? And are there other authors out there listening to this? You have a back catalog. Maybe your books aren't doing anything. And maybe in your head, you're like, oh, I don't want to use an AI voice for this. I want to do it properly, because I've thought about this for all of my full length books. I'm like, well, I want to do it properly. And it's like, well, maybe if you've got a book, you're not, I mean, you can try it like this with Amazon, and if you don't like it, you can take it off sale and do it properly. But maybe you should give it a try. And I think one of the things I'm going to do this year is go through my back catalog of books and find the ones that I am not so attached to, that I'm willing to experiment with this and actually put it out there and see if it moves the needle, because I do believe I might be leaving a huge amount of money on the table.
Yeah, and just because you use the AI voice thing to generate it doesn't mean you have to hit publish. Like, if you listen to it and it's not good, and it's not something that sounds realistic or believable to you, and you think it would hurt your brand, just don't publish it, right? Don't put it up there for sale. But I agree that there's a lot of times where somebody says, if I want to do something, but I want to do it perfectly, and that leads them to never doing it at all, right? So if you're gonna do it the traditional way, great, do it. But if that's holding you back because of the cost or the time or all that stuff, and you're just never going to get to it, maybe don't be so stuck in that mode of thinking, and give it a try the other way. And maybe you'll find that you do it, sounds okay, you put it for sale, it makes good sales, it starts earning you revenue, but you think, and that gives you the confidence to say, okay, well, for the next one, maybe I'll try investing a bit, hiring a human to narrate it and see how it goes, and maybe it'll be better for my next book. And then you can maybe test the two of them and say, okay, well, this one with the human does way better, and people are maybe leaving comments saying they love the voice acting, whereas with the other one, there weren't comments, or there was negative comments, right? So you can compare and see whether it's worth it, or maybe they do basically the same. And so then for your third book, you say, okay, well, I didn't really notice any difference when I hired somebody, except for that it cost me a lot of money, so now I'll go back and try it the other way. So it's always good to experiment.
And I mean, one thing you could do is you could try it with the Amazon voice, and if it's successful, maybe it's going to fund you doing it properly with an actual voice artist.
It's like you weren't listening, because that is what I just said. But yes, I agree with you. Surprisingly. What do you have your own anything that you think for 2025 was a big sort of trend? Well, actually, the one more that I wanted to mention was sort of the new genres that we see. A lot of times hybrid genres. Romantasy is the big one that comes to mind, right? Like, it's not like it was invented in 2025, but I think it became much more popular this year.
Yeah, and dark fantasy, I think, is massive. And I don't know how much time you spend in the top 100 erotica things on Amazon stuff, but there are an awful lot of authors publishing an awful lot of books that are absolutely wild. I love this because I'm very much about like no censorship and freedom of expression, stuff like that. And it seems like this open secret that the stuff that is largely targeted towards women on Amazon is completely bonkers. If you look at these books, it's, you know, monsters and reverse harems and women getting kidnapped and but falling for their kidnappers. And some of the stuff is, you read it and you're like, this is absolutely wild, and it exists on Amazon and it's marketed on BookTok, because there are literally creators on TikTok who are like, look at this completely crazy book, this is what happens in it. And it's fantastic advertising for the author, because people go and then find out that book because it sounds so completely wild, and then you read it. And I love the fact that this exists, and I think it's driving so many book sales, and it's making so many self-published authors successful and able to earn full-time livings. I'm just terrified that at some point some nerd or some I don't know, some prude with power is going to discover this, and there's going to be there's going to be like a purge. Because you remember back, we called it, what did we call it, Smutpocalypse or something, which was back in the early days of Amazon self-publishing. People were throwing wild stories up there. I mean, I was writing lots of dirty short stories, but they were fairly innocuous ones. I mean, the first article I ever got paid for publishing was a short story in Hustler magazine, which is a dirty story. And so I was just writing stuff like that. So yeah, it was a bit smutty, but that's it. But then people were publishing really disturbing things. And then the Daily Mail and all these newspapers started saying, look at all this terrible, disgusting stuff that's available on Amazon. And Amazon like purged it all. And tons of authors got kicked off Barnes and Noble and stuff like this. I'm just worried that at some point, some prude is going to look at Amazon and be like, have you seen what these women are reading? And I don't want that to happen, because I think it's wonderful that there's this whole ecosystem of completely wild fiction that is thriving there. And I hope we protect it. And but that is one thing that really stood out to me in 2005, is there are authors making bank writing completely deranged fiction, which is selling in buckets. And I love that. I love the fact that that actually exists. I'm kind of jealous that I'm not part of it, but I admire it. And I think mostly female authors who are doing it, but I mean, I applaud them for what they're achieving, and they deserve all the.
Yeah, and I think Amazon, after that purge, I think one of the things that they implemented was that sort of dungeon idea, right? Where what they do with some of the erotica, with a lot of the erotica, is they make it harder to find unless you have like a direct link to the book. It often doesn't come up in search. And just becomes difficult to find. But I think that's one of the ways that they have kept it out of sort of the public eye as much, and that way they've kept it a little bit, right? So that only people that are specifically looking for it and know how to look for it properly will find it. It's not going to just come up for anybody else, and that sort of keeps the people that would be bothered by that thing away, keep it away from them.
And then ironically, BookTok gave people a way to find that stuff and directed that. I don't know, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but anybody listening to this, don't judge me. But years ago, when I was writing my smutty little stories, I wrote a Minecraft erotic story called Blocks of Lust. And I published it, and it didn't go anywhere. And then a few years later, suddenly I noticed that I was making like 50 sales a month from it. And I'm like, what is going on? And somebody on YouTube had found this book, and then all their mates had got together and done an hour-long video reading this book, being like, look how bonkers this book is. It's a Minecraft erotic story. And I actually took the book down because I was like, I don't necessarily know if I wanted to have this much. But it's funny. You will find, if you write your stuff and put it up there, the new social media landscape means that there are ways for it to be discovered and appreciated by people that exist beyond Amazon. And I think you mentioned in a previous one that Amazon is changing their algorithms, or maybe it was our mate who's got that great YouTube channel about Kindle stuff.
Well, Dale.
Yes, Dale, that's it. He was mentioning that the way Amazon is weighting things is they are appreciating stuff that comes in from the outside a lot more organically. So if you're doing Facebook sales, that's not necessarily going to give your book more organic ranking or organic visibility. But if you're getting a lot of clicks and a lot of links from TikTok and stuff like this, then that will raise it up in the ranks and the visibility. So it's kind of amazing how the larger social media ecosystem is impacting the way books are popular on Amazon.
Right. The Amazon's algorithms are constantly changing. We have talked about that and I think in 2025, they've been tweaking it, and it has changed the way that they rank books and the discoverability of books. So that has made it so that people have to, they're always trying. You always see these companies about, and you see it more about Google, but like the SEO optimization, right? And if everybody figures out the way to game the system, then the system no longer works, right? Because the whole point is that it's giving you search results that supposedly are relevant to what you want. But if people know how to specifically take any book and put in what they need to make it come to the top of the search engine, that doesn't mean that's a book you want. It just means they figured out like sort of a back way to put it in front of you. So they always have to keep tweaking it, and they're not always transparent about what they changed for those reasons, so that people don't realize how to game it, and that's why they have to constantly change it. So it's hopefully we have to always assume they're doing it the right way, and that it will, and we don't always agree. We talked in many times about changes they've made that we think are negative, but you can't really do much about that except work within the system we have. So okay, so I think in terms of the 2025 things, is there any other things that you think were really big trends in 2025 that we missed?
Well, I mean, continuing that point, I think it is creating books that people really want. I was thinking of three authors who we've had on the podcast, who are friends of mine. There's Raymond Benson, who wrote a new James Bond book about Felix Leiter, and that book, despite a few hiccups that Ian Fleming Publications had, is really, really successful because they listened to people who said, we want a book about Felix Leiter, we love Raymond Benson, we want him to write it, and they did that, and they gave people what they wanted, and it was successful. Caleb Daniels, who is writing the I know I've always gone about James Bond books, the Guns of James Bond. I mean, he raised $650,000 in a crowdfunding for this book. And that's because he identified there was something people wanted, and he had the credibility as a successful social media person who bridged the gap between James Bond and guns and gave people what they wanted, and it was massively successful. And our friend Terence, who I love, he's writing the small little adventure books, and he's finding success with that. And I think even the publishers are thinking, hey, he's finding success with this, so maybe this is a route we need to go down. Again, giving people what they want. I think if there's one thing I've learned in 2025, it is, if you want to be a successful author, you have to give people what they want. And I don't know about you, but I look at my first successful book. I wrote 11 full-length novels before I had my first bestseller. My first bestseller was like a salacious romance novel with a great title and stuff like that, but it was what people wanted, and that's what you've got to focus on. And I think Amazon changing the algorithms, as you said, you can chase after whatever it is that Amazon is trying to change to make the books appear or to appear. You can try and rig the system, or what you could do is look at why Amazon is doing this. Amazon is doing this because they want the most popular books to be the most visible. And therefore, if you write a book that people want, then whatever changes Amazon makes to your algorithm will work in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's always good advice, right? Right. What people want, just figuring out what they want, right? I think another genre that has become big because of the demand is cozy mysteries, right? I mean, it's always been big, but I think in this, I've heard a lot more about in 2025, cozy mysteries becoming more and more popular. It's just something that that people like. And like you said, with you know, the crowdfunding, that's become big as well. We saw that way back in 2022 with Brandon Sanderson and his millions and millions of dollars he earned. But I think it's been growing and growing in this space as well, where authors are turning to Kickstarter to not just fund a regular book, but fund special editions of their book. Right. And I think that's one of those trends that is going to continue. If we want to move to some 2026 predictions in the last, you know, few minutes of the pod, I think, you know, I'm starting to see more authors sort of creating those artisan books, those special editions that they can sell to their fans, to their mailing list, to people that follow them, you know, and they cost more, but there's something special about them. And it shows that they were often they're physical, not like ebooks, right? People still want their physical books. They still have their bookshelves behind them, right? They still want to display books that they love, and you know, creating those special editions allows them to do that. And I think we're going to see more of that going forward, especially because that sort of almost proves it was human made, right? It's like this wasn't created. This is a physical book, wasn't created by AI. Maybe it was for some of the design, but like it, you know, there was a lot of human work that went into that.
Yeah, Caleb Daniels, he's got several different versions of his James Bond book. There's the regular book, and then there are special edition covers that you could only get if you were one of the people who helped kickstart it. And yeah, that's something that you're going to keep forever. And I think those are the kind of books that are going to be coveted and treasured. And yeah, you're right. I think physical books, you and I being in this industry, I think sometimes we forget just physical books still. I do believe physical books still like dominate printing publishing outside of like romance, which I think most people read on Kindle. When it comes to almost every other genre, physical books are still a significant and perhaps larger part of that sales process. So they shouldn't be ignored.
Yeah, and there, if the demand is there, you know, people will do it. It's just trying to be different, and I think that's one of the keys, right? I think, you know, that proof of humanity that we were talking about is also going to trend in 2026, where people are going to they'll connect more with their audience, show them their process. You know, we already see, and there's a dangerous trend, right? Like I read an article, trying to remember where I read it, but the gist of it was that I think it was for one of the awards things where they had published their guidelines saying that they didn't allow or they weren't going to allow AI in part of the process of writing. If you were going to for a book to be nominated, there was some backlash saying no AI at all should be allowed. So then they changed the rules to say, okay, no AI, right? But what was discussed in this article, and I think it was a very good point, is that there is a danger to that, right? Because it's very hard to detect AI, and all those systems as well detect it. They're not 100%. They're not even. I don't even think they're 80%. You know, they're looking at specific factors that are easy to mask. You know, like EM dashes or too many EM dashes. Lots of authors use EM dashes, and it's very easy to tell AI not to use EM dashes, right? Like, I mean, that's not the only thing, but that's, you know, they're looking for little things. There's no fingerprint that they can say decisively this is. And lots of books have been said that they were AI when we know that they weren't. They were written, you know, 100 years ago, and AI says, oh yeah, AI written, you know, or books that were written by AI that they don't detect, right? So it's not a perfect. There's no way to really detect it. But the danger, I think, of saying, you know, okay, only these books are nominated and you can't use any AI, can potentially lead to people making accusations, authors having to defend themselves when, you know, to prove somehow that they didn't use AI. You know, I worry about sort of the backlash and the witch hunt that might come from this sort of thing when it's something that is not easily provable, right? So that is one of my concerns about sort of those rules where you say, oh, there can't be any AI, and it's against our rules, and then you can't include it. And then what happens when somebody makes that accusation, says, oh, there was AI? How do you prove it? How do you know?
So my eldest son has just finished applying to all the universities, and he had to write essays for all of these. And I thought I would be helpful. So I was like, hey, I'll write an essay and show it to you so you can see what kind of essay you're meant to do. And I sat down and I wrote one, and I personally think it was brilliant. And I gave it to him, and he's like, oh yeah, this is just AI. And I like yelled at him. I'm very, very chill and stuff like that. But I was like, no, I was so offended that he thought it was AI, because I'd like sat down and spent an hour writing this, and I was really proud of it. And then, yeah, he just accused it of being AI. And then that's going to be one of these things. And some people will have done it with AI. Some people won't have done it with AI. You just are not going to be able to tell.
Yeah. And so then
unless you're putting in like dye ingredients that are from Zelda Breath of the Wild.
No, and I think the problem, the onus is going to shift to people having to prove their innocence, right? Instead of proving the guilt. That's you know, it's kind of anti what the legal system is, right? You know, you're innocent until proven guilty. But I think that we're going to see accusations made, and then bandwagon, everyone jumping on grabbing their pitchforks, and we see that all the time on the internet, where somebody makes an accusation and everyone, oh yeah, and then they jump on, and then nobody checks, nobody does any proof, and then the onus is on that person to prove their innocence. And then how do you do that, right? So, you know, unless they're filming themselves typing away, you know, and maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe some authors are going to start using social media to post more updates about their work, and to you know, record themselves during the process, and so that if they're ever accused, I don't know.
I think people are just going to get over it. I think I don't know if you remember digital photography. I used to work for a nudie magazine that shot everything on film. And it was the big thing about shooting on film because it's so much better than digital. And it's like these days, 15 years later, nobody really cares. It's the quality of the photograph. And I think we're very soon going to get to a point where people aren't going to worry about whether something was created with AI or written by a human person or a blend of the two. It's going to be how good it is.
The only difference between those examples is, you know, digital photography was replacing a piece of technology, and it was not built upon stolen works of the people's that it's replacing, right? So that's why it's going to take a longer time to shift the mindset, and we might need to get to the point where, you know, AI starts to use only works that were specifically allowed to train on, right? But yeah, I mean, you know, we're definitely going to start to see in 2026 and beyond more acceptance of AI as it gets more and more integrated into our society and everything that we do. But I think it's not going to become infallible, and I don't believe that it ever can be, because it's built on fallible data, right? Like, if you say, I ask it a question and it doesn't always give me the answer, remember what it's trained on. It's trained on everything on the internet, right? And if there is fake answers on the internet, that's going to get pulled into the AI, and the AI doesn't necessarily know. How does it know which is the real one, which is the other one? So it goes by the one it sees most, but that doesn't necessarily make it true. And it also depends on what it was trained on. It could have specifically been trained on fake information, right? As a way to fool people, right? You can build an AI and train it on whatever you want. And if you can train it on fake news, you can train an AI to believe that the world is flat, and anybody who asks it questions is going to get answers about the world being flat. Like, you don't know what it was trained on and who created it, and you're going to get left and right versions of AI, and that's the danger. Is there's no source of truth that you can say it was trained on. And I see this a lot, like if I use AI often to explain to me how to use different software programs, right? And often I'll say, okay, how do I do this? And it'll say, oh, click on this, click on that. And then I'll look at it and be like, those things don't exist. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, click on this, click on that. I'm like, what do you? And I'll send it screenshots. And the issue is like, it's often because it's using the data that it has. Most of is on a different version, right? Like maybe something was on version 5 for 2 years, and then they came out with version 6 recently, and it's very different. But AI was trained on version 5, so it's not that it's making things up in every case. It's just like it's got the wrong.
It's a bloke called Dave. It's a bloke called Dave with Google, and he gives you the best intentioned answers that he can. But at the end of the day, he doesn't necessarily know what he's talking about.
Right. So, I mean, we have to remember that going forward, but I think we are going to see, AI being used more and more. We might see blockchain. I mean, I don't understand, crypto and blockchain and all that stuff, but I have seen talk about how blockchain can be used in royalty tracking and, I guess it's maybe in terms of how AI can used to pay authors for using their stuff, or maybe I don't even know how it all works. I don't get all that stuff, so maybe I shouldn't even be talking about it. But I think that the idea that blockchain will somehow be used to track royalties and decentralize things, that's something I've read briefly about for 2026. So maybe that's going to come. We're going to see, I think, more melding of niches as people see that you take one niche and you put another one together and people love it, right?
Yeah, I mean that's how romantasy really,
right?
Isn't it?
Exactly, right. And that's a self-publishing thing, right? You've talked about this. We've talked about this, where it's like self-publishing has allowed people to take those chances and create new things that people like, whereas traditional publishing, they would never take those chances because of the investment involved, and there was no proven market, right? And an author that just says, I'm just going to try something, it's just my time, and put it out there, and then finds there's an audience for it, they took that chance, they didn't have that huge investment. And that's how new genres are being formed, and we're going to see just, I think, more of that, because we've seen such a big surgence of romantasy and that kind of a thing, right? So people are going to start trying other things.
Yeah, that's why I think that I look at AI as a good thing. I think it is not going to take a slice of people's pie. It's going to make the pie bigger. It's going to give people more opportunity. I know we're running out of time. My final thing is, what I find AI really, really useful for, as a bloke called Dave sitting in the corner, is I say, I want to write this book. I want to publish it by March 1st. How am I going to do that? And he will come up with it will come up with a plan. Like, okay, this week you need to write 2,000 words. You need to do this. You need to do that. And for somebody with ADHD, and for somebody who doesn't often know where to get started, that's really valuable. And I think if you can leverage AI to just help you do what you need to do without getting lost in the weeds or distracted or anything like that, it can be massively powerful.
Yeah, and you can use it to research even before you start writing the market opportunities. It is, if you use the deep research features of most of the major AI, they do a very good job, and they source all of their material. Like, you'll have pages of source material at the end that you can use to cross-reference what it tells you. But it will give you facts and figures and data around what you're asking for. I use it all the time for researching different things. And I think that's a trend that, as more authors sort of accept AI, they're going to realize that is a great way to research their books, research whether a book has a potential market, whether, if it's a historical book, they can do deep research on history, and with the sources that they can then verify to make sure that, they're not dyeing their clothes through Zelda mechanics. But yeah, so I think hopefully that's a good list of things that we think that's going to happen. And I guess we'll see once the year progresses how right we were.
Yeah, and if anybody is listening to this, well, hopefully somebody's listening to this, and you have thoughts about it, let us know in the comments down below, whether you're listening on as a podcast or whether you're on YouTube, because we want to hear. If you have thoughts about AI, then we want to hear your opinions. If you're like, oh no, AI is the damn devil, then tell us. And we are interested in, because there are no wrong opinions. We don't know what we're doing. Like I'm just as much of a bloke in the corner called Dave as AI is. So, you know, we want to hear your opinions.
Absolutely. You know, about any of the things we talked about, or about your own predictions about what 2026 is going to bring to our industry. And that's the kind of stuff we want to hear about.
Absolutely. So, well, Craig, this has been fun. I've enjoyed this. So everyone who's listening, we hope your 2026 is absolutely fantastic. Be sure to leave a comment down below. At least hit that like button. We'd really appreciate it. That subscribe button if you haven't already. And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode of Fully Booked, and we will see you then. So until then, cheerio.
Happy New Year.